Welcome back, ladies and gents. This is George Bean, and today's review is a bit of a special one here, it being for a film from 2002, directed by the legendary Steven Spielberg and starring Tom Cruise. That film I'm talking about is Minority Report, which is based on the 1956 short story of the same name by famed sci-fi author Philip K. Dick, who I'm fucking sure you all know who he is. His books would go on to become great to decent movies, such as this film. We can remember it for Your Wholesale, for Total Recall, and finally, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep for, you guessed it, the cult classic Blade Runner. But the movie I'd like to talk about is Minority Report, because this seems to have been fallen off under the radar for the past 14 years, 15 by now. It's a really good movie that I just got around to seeing. The plot: the film is set in the futuristic year of 2054 in Washington, D.C., where it is shown that a new specialized police department called Pre-Crime has been designed to prevent a murder before it happens. How they do that is that Pre-Crime apprehends would-be criminals based on foreknowledge provided by three people with psychic abilities called precogs. With this, Pre-Crime has managed to successfully reduce the homicide rate down to 0, and thus it has been praised as a perfect system. Our main character is John Anderton, played by Tom Cruise, who is the chief team leader of the department, which is also primarily headed by its CEO, Lamar Burgess, played by the ever-awesome Max von Sydow. Anderton is shown to be a divorced husband because 6 years earlier, his 6-year-old son, Sean, was taken from him at a local swimming pool, and he has been grieving over it since, even turned to drug addiction to numb the pain. But he has become an impressive leader for Pre-Crime, managing to having saved multiple lives. Then one day, when the Precogs predict another murder, but its perpetrator, John Anderton himself. They predict that Anderton will murder someone he never even met before. Now, having been accused of a murder he will commit in the next 2 days, Anderton is forced to go on the run to prove his innocence and try to figure out who his would-be victim is and what would drive him to commit the murder. Now, to talk about how the film came to fruition, it originally began life in 1992 as a proposed sequel to another Philip K. Dick film from 1990 called Total Recall, which of course stars Arnold Schwarzenegger. This meant having to completely restructure the short story's plot elements, such as changing the original Earth setting to that of Mars, and changing the John Anderton character to be Schwarzenegger's character Douglas Quaid, who had been a law enforcement officer for Pre-Crime in that script, and the Martian mutants from the first film were to be the clairvoyant precogs for the sequel. However, many factors had led to it not coming to fruition, one of them being that its parent company, Caracol, having gone bankrupt in the mid-90s after a string of box office bombs such as Cutthroat Island. But along the way, the script managed to survive, and it was decided to rework it into a more standalone, straight adaptation of Dick's original story, with John Cohen being hired to write his draft in 1997. Around that time, superstar Tom Cruise had come across the Cohen draft and had offered it to Spielberg for them to make what would be their first collaboration on a film, especially being a sci-fi project. And that was a big thing at the time. The pairing of Spielberg and Cruise on a sci-fi project, It must have been mind-blowing for moviegoers in 2002. Now, to discuss the topic of there being differences between the film and its source material, there are numerous, unsurprisingly, for the sake of structuring it into a feature film, so I shall point out the differences featured. The first is the main character John Anderton. In the short story, he is described as a 50-year-old, balding, out-of-shape police officer who created pre-crime, whilst in the film, Anderton is shown to be in his late 30s, handsome, small, athletic, with a full head of hair, who joined pre-crime after his son's kidnapping. This change in physique was done to fit with that of Tom Cruise, and for the sake of Cruise to properly perform the big action scenes. And also, in the story, Anderton's wife is named Lisa and is younger than him, but in the movie, his ex-wife is named Laura and is shown to be older than him. The story is set primarily in New York City, while the film is shown to be set in Washington, D.C., with a few backdrop scenes set in Baltimore, Maryland, and Northern Virginia. As for pre-crime as a whole, it is a government brand of the story, while it is its own independent police department in the film. In the short story, the precogs were originally named Mike, Donna, and Jerry, and were described to be deformed and intellectually disabled. But in the movie, they are instead called Agatha, Dashiell, and Arthur, named so after famous crime writers Agatha Christie, Dashiell Hammett, and Arthur Conan Doyle. And the precogs are written as children of drug addicts whose mutations had led them to dream of future murders, which are captured by machines. They are deified by the pre-crime officers and are implied to be intelligent, like in one scene where Agatha guided Anderton successfully through a crowded mall while being pursued by pre-crime, managing to avoid the pursuers. As for their abilities, in the short stories, the precogs can see other crimes other than just murder, whilst in the movie, the precogs can only clearly see murder. I'm guessing to help simplify the clairvoyance aspect for the audiences for the movie, but who knows. One big difference to bring up about the movie and the short story is the ending. Oh, and spoiler alert if you don't want to know how both stories end. Okay. So in the short story, Anderton's future victim was General Leopold Kaplan, a military general who desired to discredit pre-crime in order to get more financing for a military authority. And at the end, Anderton consciously kills Kaplan to prevent the destruction of pre-crime. And thus it ended with Anderton and his wife Lisa being sent to a distant colony, having proved pre-crime to be a major success. Now as for the film's ending, is such a huge change. In the film, Anderton's future victim is a man named Leo Crow, who he has never met before, but upon finding out about Crow, Anderton discovers that he is his son's killer, causing him to fly into a fit of rage against Crow. But now having known his future, Anderton instead arrests him. Crow insists he must be killed, revealing that he was being forced into acting like he was Anderton's son's killer. But he does get killed, sealing Anderton's predetermined fate. Anderton is arrested and haloed. Don't ask, just watch the movie. But it turns out the man who set him up was actually his boss, Lamar Burgess, because Burgess wanted to preserve pre-crime, his baby, and did not want Anderton to investigate a drowning of a woman 6 years earlier, who was revealed to be Agatha's mother, whom Lamar murdered as well, to protect pre-crime. Anderton confronts Lamar during a special celebration of pre-crime, and expose his ulterior motives. During their confrontation, the precogs predict Lamar murdering Anderton, but instead, Lamar commits suicide, asking John for forgiveness. His death ends up discrediting pre-crime, effectively shutting it down, having proved that it was not as flawless as presumed. And in the end, Anderton reunited with his divorced wife, almost about to have a second baby coming, while the three precogs, now free, live out the rest of their lives peacefully in seclusion. So yeah, quite a big contrast, and it did not escape criticism from the critics. The film has a more traditional happy ending, which contradicts the tone of the rest of the picture. There's even speculation that this ending is actually the product of John's imagination, caused by hallucinations from his forced coma after he is incarcerated, a la Total Recall and Brazil. In my honest opinion, I believe that Spielberg is not the kind of guy who would go for a dark and somber ending, and has proven that many times in his films. Maybe if this movie had been directed by someone, say, David Fincher, I bet he would have definitely ended it with Anderton being incarcerated, make it more like the short story's ending. Now, with most other Philip K. Dick stories and films, they all have some form of a central theme to explore. In Minority Report's case, the central theme is the question of free will versus determinism, examining the concept of whether free will can exist if the future is known in advance. Like, for example, if you knew in advance that you were going to commit murder, what would you do? Would you try to change your predetermined future, or is it fate that must lead to the predetermined outcome? There's one line Lamar Burgess says to Anderton, which was, "We don't choose the things we believe in. They choose us." And that's the big question the movie brings up, how our fate is decided if it is known in advance. Another theme it explores is the political and legal use of pre-crime, as it shows that such a perfect system with such a unique power could potentially be used for more ulterior purposes, even abused, such as Lamar willing to commit murder in order to preserve his baby. Spielberg once stated that if such a system like pre-crime had ever existed, he would fiercely oppose such a thing, as its power could be abused, and I can't argue with him for that. It concerns itself with the role of preventative government in protecting its citizenry, which was apt out of the time of the pictures given America's debates over the government's expanding powers after the 9/11 attacks. The future world in Minority Report of retinal scans, robotic human inspectors, and intrusive individualized public advertising had arrived in American theaters as the country was debating how governmental intrusion into personal matters was necessary to ensure the safety of its own citizens. Even Spielberg puts it this way: we're giving up some of our freedom so that the government can protect us. It's a very interesting debate to explore in sci-fi films, the most recent one being the 2014 superhero film Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which brings up such a debate like that. And it's a pretty scary thing to think about, especially with Edward Snowden having revealed such a thing like that. And of course, also another theme, it has the theme of broken families, a usual theme you will find in almost all of Spielberg's films, the most prominent one being in E.T. the Extraterrestrial. But I won't go into the whole broken family theme since everybody has already gone into that point. Now for the technology in Minority Report, it's pretty outstanding how the Spielberg managed to create such a future world like this. Before he made this movie, he invited 15 experts, scientific experts, to do a think tank, con- having to be consulted to create a plausible future reality for the year 2054, as opposed to a more traditional science fiction setting. He wanted to see what the future would like plausibly, based on the real world now, which is an interesting thing that he had done. And it's pretty impressive that the technology in this film is amazing. Like the cars and the different types of highways it goes through, and the all the technology. I can't believe it. It looks pretty amazing in this movie. Mind-blowing. If you're a diehard sci-fi fan, you should check this movie out for that. The technology in this movie alone. It's really cool. For the music score, the music was done by the legendary composer and my hero, John Williams, who is a frequent Spielberg collaborator for over 40 years. The score does have some pretty great moments in this film, such as the big one piece where when Anderton begins his going on the run by crawling out of this speeding vehicle through the futuristic busy traffic. There's a there's a few moments in that piece that reminds me of a similar piece Williams had done in Jaws 2, where the shark chases down the female water skier out on the beach waters. The scene, and there's also the score when Anderton is hiding from the spiders in the apartment in that bathroom. The score is pretty suspenseful. It's pretty tense and suspenseful how Williams does that music score. I love that. That's why he's my favorite music composer ever. And yeah, the score is a pretty decent piece worth listening to, and I highly recommend it if you are a fellow John Williams fan as well. This movie has been adapted into a television series in 2015 as a standalone sequel, but it only ran for one season on the Fox channel before it was cancelled. I've never actually gotten around to watching the show, and I don't think I ever will in the near future. But you never know. What do you think about the show? Tell me what you think about it. So, throughout my childhood, since 2002, I have heard about this movie numerous times, but I had never gotten around to seeing it during that time. But it wasn't until I finally gotten to watch it around last October on cable television. I think it was the WGN, I think. But anyway, and I was just blown away by what I was watching. So I decided that I had to get the DVD to watch it again. And I watched it again, and I fell in love with it. I now regret not having caught it earlier in years, because it is a mixture of my two favorite film genres, science fiction and whodunit mystery. So this definitely fits my type of movie in terms of those two genres. It's such a rewatchable movie to watch, very entertaining, and it is certainly an amazing collaboration between Spielberg and Cruise. Certainly better than their second collaboration, that being the 2005 War of the Worlds remake. This is the best out of the two between them, I believe. It's a good movie. So again, Minority Report is a great, amazing sci-fi mystery chase film to watch if you were to be in a state of boredom one day. I'd bet to say that this may be the last great film by Spielberg in the 2000s decade. It is a perfect mixture of elements of science fiction, tech noir, whodunit, and thriller genres, as well as being a traditional chase film like The Fugitive. It has a pretty well made balancing of tone. It has some dark moments while also having some pretty humorous moments as well. I love that one scene where when Anderton is fighting his fellow teammates on the jetpacks and they come crashing into this one apartment with a family in it, and this woman's like, "Go away, get out of my kitchen." It's like as if this wasn't the first time that has happened before to this family. And has anyone also noticed this one old man sitting in his chair, just frozen with carelessness? I mean, all this chaos is going on around him, and yet not one fuck was given by him at all at that day. He's like, I don't give a fuck, man. I just love that. And it is kind of awkward humor in a way at some points. I believe this type of awkward humor in this film is similar to what Spielberg had done on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. That film was considered the darkest of the four indie films, but there are a few awkward humor moments in it that possibly being Spielberg's attempt to keep the film from being too dark for the young adolescent audiences to endure. So I guess the same can be said for this film as well. The entire cast gives a really great performances in this film. The best ones being from Tom Cruise, Colin Farrell, and Max von Sydow. Those guys are great. Tom Cruise is really good in this. This is one of his very best films in the 2000s decade. And really good performance from him. Definitely a person you might root for. Before he went batshit insane on Oprah in 2005. And Colin Farrell, he plays more of a gray character, and at first he seems like an asshole at first, but once you get to know him, you understand him, and you kind of sympathize with him in a way. He's a man who's just doing his job, and you kind of sympathize with him in that kind of way. He's probably the only competent person in this movie who doesn't have any ulterior purpose. Just a man doing his job. And Max von Sydow is amazing. I love that guy. He is great. I'm saddened that he's the main villain in this movie. I would love for Max von Sydow to be my grandfather. He's that cool. Any movie he's in, I'll watch him in it. And to be honestly, if I was in a situation facing Max von Sydow, I'd be okay with him. I'd be okay if he shot me. Forgive me, George. Boom! I forgive you. You know what I mean? He's that really cool. Such a nice, sweet gentleman. Even in Judge Dredd, he's really that good. And Samantha Morris, I think, who you may remember, I think, from Broken Arrow. She plays Agatha, and she gives an amazing performance as well, playing someone who is scared of what kind of power she has, and to look into the future. Freaky stuff. Must be very scary to have that kind of power. Even Peter Stormare, whom you may recognize from Fargo and Armageddon, also has a minor role in this movie, but he's pretty hilarious in this movie. I do like how it questions how free will could not be a virtue when living in a world where one's future has been predetermined in advance, and how that person may be able to change his predetermined fate if by his own choice. And the action scenes in this film are pretty outstanding for its time, and pretty fun to watch. The one scene where Anderton begins his running by crawling out his speeding futuristic car as it moves downward on a vertical highway, and he has to jump from car to car as they move downward. It's pretty impressive and suspenseful scene to watch. Though it does have some Indiana Jones syndrome in it, to it, mixed into it. Because if I was going through such a situation like that, I'd probably accidentally slip off one of the moving cars and possibly fall to my death. But again, still, pretty a suspenseful moment. And the best suspenseful moment is probably when the Anderton hides in the bathtub from those spiders. It's again, a pretty suspenseful moment. Much more suspenseful than in the basement scene in the War of the Worlds remake. This one is much better than that scene. I'll give it that. And as for the locomotive scene, the locomotive factory scene is a really nice treat to watch. I love that stun gun Anderton used on his pursuers, which you just spin like the barrel and bring the power up. I wish we could develop such a valuable weapon like that for these times. And it's pretty cool how you can do that, just and to charge it up. Oh, and by the way, the Loco Factory is apparently inspired by an initially written scene for the 1959 Alfred Hitchcock film North by Northwest, starring Cary Grant and Eva Mary Saint, which was the Loco Factory scene written for this film was discarded for timing reasons. Thought that would be a nice little tidbit to mention there. And it was also in the original drafts of Minority Report. The special effects have dated a bit in the past 15 years since its release, but there are some moments that are still mind-blowing to watch. And the 2054 setting is still a pretty amazing world to explore. And the chrome-bleached color style for the film gives the film a noirish look and feel to the film, and makes it feel distinctive to other science fiction films, especially makes it different from Blade Runner, not a complete copycat of it. In fact, this film's futuristic style, along with that of Blade Runner's, are what inspired the futuristic style in the 2012 Total Recall remake, which Colin Farrell also stars in, playing Douglas Quaid in that film. And I'll probably get around to mentioning that film some other time. So, overall, I'm willing to give Minority Report at least 8 stars out of 10. Because I feel it is an underappreciated Spielberg cruise film that deserves a second chance. And it's a fun but smart action sci-fi film that you may hopefully take a fun joy out of. And it's pretty good and deserves a second viewing. And I feel it's underappreciated, so I hope you have a fun time watching it at some point. Maybe rent it out. So, hope you enjoyed the review, and as always, I'll see you ladies and gents, and until next time. Peace!